Good evening, good peoples. Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation here. All right, let me jump into Rex declarations, right? What is Rex paying? And I will update that. I can figure out. Here are the distributions. All right, and then I'm going to do all the comparisons on each fund because they have four funds, right? They have an underlying of MSTR, which is MSII, that paid 0.0907, so 9 cents, yielding 23.46 annually. COII, based on Coinbase from Rex, paid 12.12.1212, yielding 27.28. NVII was clearly the big payer here, right? As NVIDIA still looks good, but I tell you what, I was just looking at some technical charts in TradingView. There's an apparent head and shoulders on NVIDIA. And again, the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 look dangerous in September and October. So if I had to bet one side or the other, I would bet bearish on most of the NASDAQ high flyers and on the S&P 500. But again, anything could happen. Could we run it a little higher for a month or two or three? Certainly. The odds don't favor that, but we shall see. All right, TSII underlying Tesla paid 0.0886. By the way, NVII paid 55 cents to get to that 90. That's almost 5 times the highest of any, more than 5 times the other two of the three. It's not quite 5 times COII. All right. But TSII paid 0.0886, so the lowest payer yielding 20.17. All right, guys, let's get into the individual summaries. All right, what I did not do is I did not update these. Again, time consuming. I'd rather get you the summaries rather than take you through each day which fund traded a little better. I'll just give you the net on who's performing the best in equal time. Over here, I track the newest payments. So NVIDIA a while ago paid 84 cents, which is a monthly, right? NVDW, their last payout was 0.438. So you can see the totals for the periods of time, right? They're not equal periods, but remember, for every one of these monthlies, you have, 4 over here on the weeklies. And then NVII, since June, has become a weekly. Since June 1st, I think their first payment was around 6.6. So, I'm sorry, this is Rex. The thing I'm describing is Granite. As of June 1, they went to weekly, having been monthly before. So they've paid $7. Rex has paid $3, Round Hill's paid 12. Again, not always the same time frame. That's why I measure the same. And Max has paid $7.20. So we'll see everything laid out in the comparison. All right, in the Tesla funds, again, not updated. I didn't update any of the daily detail. I did make sure we had current prices, last week's prices, and also any dividends paid. Look at Round Hill's last weekly, which will be paid tomorrow. I was kind of looking for it on Tuesday, but I think with the holiday day, it pushed everything. So you'll be getting your Round Hill payouts from last Friday's declaration tomorrow on Wednesday, 9/3. Good peoples. All right, so Tesla, again, they won't till tomorrow morning pre-market tell us what the actuals was. I had predicted 46 cents. So just to be fair and full disclosure, I'm adding 50 cents. If I need to back it to 46 and I'm 100% right, or I was over and it's 40 or maybe it's 52, I'll update it. But I wanted to give Tesla and YieldMax a fair chance here. When you wait a whole month for a dividend and everybody else is paying weekly along the way, well, that's not true of Curve. Curve just declared this earlier this week, but I would have probably attempted to do that for them as well. So anyway, that is there. Full disclosure. Wanted you to know that. Okay, TSII, which is what I'm really mainly covering now, and all the comparisons of similar funds, they paid 886. But this Roundhill was just, I think it's a one-off because I think Tesla's fallen back down a little bit. But it just goes to show you with leverage how well it can get. I mean, they had an 85, dropped to 38. I imagine this will be 20, 30, 40 cents next week. I'd have to look at it in more detail, but don't expect, you guys sometimes on Roundhill, oh, they suck. They were down 75%. It happens. But look at this. It's up 300%, right? Multiply that times 4. If you multiply it times 3, you get what, $1.17. So it's 3+ times as much as it was before. Then you could say, oh man, 85 and went down 60%. Of course. You know what? That's showing you that the payments are based on something and not what some of you guys said in the comments about a gimmick. There's no gimmick here. Roundhill is pretty much a straight shooter on this stuff. They're using leverage. When they use leverage and the underlying's moving up, you see it reflected in payouts. You see it reflected in the gain. Also, you get to, you know what? It's like steering a ship. Let's say that you're going to sail and it's going to take you three years to get somewhere. So you got a compass. So once a month, you look at your heading to, through the stars and whatever level of navigation you had, 100 years ago. You correct the course. Well, what if you corrected the course every week? So when you go out of bounds or you go off kilter, you can get back in sync much sooner. So that's not the payment as much as seeing the results. If the underlying went way up and Roundhill pays me a real low payout, then what am I going to expect when it goes up even further? Not as good a payout. So I get instant acknowledgement, not instant gratification or that high that you get from the payday, guys. That's what I've personally experienced now that I abandoned YieldMax out of just frustration. I was frustrated. I tracked every single penny they brought in and they didn't pay me what I thought they should have paid me. So I take my money and my feet and I go where I want to be treated best. Okay, enough of my rant, guys. But I can't express that to you guys enough. Don't get loyal. If Roundhill changes, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm out of there. I'm going somewhere else. And I'm not exclusively Roundhill, but I happen to like the weekly payment. I happen to like the leverage because I don't buy any fund that I'm not bullish on. That's stupidity. Don't just chase yield. Yield is half of total return. All right, guys, enough. So that's what I got. So TSYY just paid 22 cents last week, or they declared that. So we're up to speed. This was just declared a couple days ago as well. So we'll see how they all stack up. Let's go through the MSTR funds. Okay. So again, not updated. So MSII, which we're talking about, Rex, they paid 0.0907 up, very similar to this 0.0988, not anywhere near the 34 cents. Okay. So IMST from Bitwise, right? They had that big $7 payment, $1.8290, 340. I mean, look at that. They're 1527. They win this category by just paying a huge amount. Okay. The question there is, how's their NAV, right? I suspect it's pretty high, NAV loss. Okay, Misty, not too long ago, declared 109. Very respectful. Frankly, I think they're trying to save the fund and they're overpaying. They didn't earn that. Okay. So MST, weeklies, right? You know the problem there, 200% leverage. If this was a galloping, if Bitcoin and MSTR were up 20% a week for 8 weeks, it would be crazy not to be an MST. You would just be, your NAV would just explode higher, right? And you would get payments along the way. Just like in a bear market, their NAV is just killing you with MST. I know I bought 100 shares just so I could experience it. It's meaningful to me in terms of, it doesn't even show up as 0.001% in my portfolio. So I don't care, but I get to experience it. And the thinking, if Bitcoin then pulls MSTR up, although it's been lagging all the Bitcoin fund, I'll eventually get my money, right? So I'm not too worried about it. And it my YouTube pays me, not a lot, but it pays me. And that's just part of, a tool I need to do and invest in so I can experience this stuff firsthand. All right, guys, so we'll look at that. And then on coin, what did everybody do on coin? Again, not updated, but let's talk about the distributions. COII had 69 from Granite. They paid us 68. Roundhill went from 62 to 57. Rex, who we're talking about, 1224 to 1212. Coney's in the middle of its sequence, right? It's about halfway through the next monthly payment. So nothing on that front. Same thing with iCoI. Why? Because these are monthlies, guys. You don't get to experience what they do. Is this going to be a $5 payment, a $9 payment, a 5, a 6, or more likely back to like a couple bucks? My guess would be, based on how the underlying has been performing, I'd expect this to be a couple dollars. If they can keep paying these outstanding stuff, then they're going to erode like crazy on the NAV. All right, guys, so we'll experience everything. Let's jump over there. So again, I'll leave this up here for a few seconds while I cough. Sorry, guys. All right. So Rex ETF, distribution, and distribution corresponding yield based on the current price. If you're not in my Patreon, guys, it's more metals focused. Certainly, I advise people, depends on which tier you're in. I do one-on-one calls for people in my top tier once a month. They get 45 minutes. Usually I go an hour, and and we talk about anything and everything on what do they want to extract from the market, what's been their experience, what's their approach, what's their knowledge level, what do they want me to help them with. That's the kind of level. So and that's growing. My biggest tier is growing now. My middle tier is the big one, right? People love that middle choice. But overall, Patreon is really growing. The metals are exploding. I say it every time to anybody that doesn't own it. It's like me telling you about Nvidia 4 or 5 years ago, saying this AI boom, you need to get in. Well, in the metals, we're in the third inning, guys. You need to get in if you're not in. It's where the market is going, not where the market has been. The commodity and super cycles sector will greatly outperform the Nasdaq and the S&P over the next 5 years. If you're not there, you won't make as much money. Can you find an outstanding stock that may still go up? Absolutely. In the Nasdaq or the S&P 500, but I guarantee you right now Newmont, the world's largest gold miner, is number 2 right behind Palantir. It may have even passed them up. You'll start seeing in 2 years a large percentage of miners in the S&P 500 because that's what the funds do. They bring in the winners. They can't ignore those. Okay? I'm telling you ahead of time what's coming. All right. So enough of my rant on that, guys. But I would be not fair to you if I didn't tell you my opinion. You know I have opinions. 45 years in the market teaches you a lot of things. I did this in the 2000s to retire. I 8x'd my money. That was before we had these high yield funds. I had to create my own outstanding growth. Okay. It can happen, guys. Yield can be a yield trap. You have to be careful. You have to be bullish on that sector long term. If you're bullish on something that's been a 15-year bull market, good luck with that lasting another 20 years. It's just foolish to think any different. All right, let's go through the funds one by one. All right, NVIDIA funds, all the funds based on the underlying NVIDIA. Well, we got all these 219, 528, 513. Can't really compare. It's there for you to look at. But how about we come down here and roll it back to everybody doing a 528, which we can do, right? So when we do that, who's the best performing fund in total return? Now, granted, it's only a 98 day. I wish I had a longer cycle to compare data, but I don't, right? Well, some obvious things stand out to me here. Let's review those. Well, number one, how did they get to 158.5? Well, they got there not by overpaying you. If you want to get overpaid, get into NVYY. It's 102% annualized yield. What's it actually paid in 98 days? 27.47. It out yield maxes yield minimum, right? Because there's a new yield max in town called Granite, okay? And just like yield max, it has NAV erosion. How can you not? And actually, NVIDIA is doing pretty well. NVIDIA is in second place. Not much over NVDW, but it is. Okay, give it due. But again, what are we in right now? We've been in a really strong NVIDIA marketplace. What do I see in NVIDIA right now? A head and shoulders top, which could get ugly, guys. Again, can that get negated by it going back up to a high and breaking through the neckline? Of course, right? Anything can happen. Right now, I'd say it's a 60% probability NVIDIA goes down fairly substantially from here. Hope not. Let's see. All right. So 109, 116, but the winner is still Rex, NVII. And it gets there through this fantastic gain. I had to double check it 3 times, right? So it's pulling in 113% annualized gain. What's it actual gain? 22.58 in less than 100 days. Who's second best in that category? Roundhill. Granite can't stay at, you can't pay 102% without almost NAV eroding in 98 days. And they did. Not a lot, though. But when this gets going, who's going to win this later? Interesting race, right? You got different styles. These two are more similar because they have the lowest percent gain and they're actually negative, right? These guys are your yield kings. Here, your leverage helps you. You have a 5163. You can't match 113, but maybe you will over time. So it remains to be seen. So that's my NVIDIA. Let's look at Tesla again. Bunch of 219s, but we got a 6.4, so that's not fair to Rex, is it? So when they're in the green, everybody else is in the red is not fair. They're not covering the same time period. So let's get to the same time period. I made everybody 6.4. Again, don't somebody come in to launch and say, Bruce, you got Tesla launch at 6.4. It launched back in late 2024. Duh. If you're going to watch the videos and make comments, at least watch the video. Don't fast forward and then just say, oh, you're wrong. That's not the launch date. You want to piss me off? Do it twice and I just block you from the channel. I hate stupidity. I don't mind mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I make plenty of them. I'm sure most of you do. But stop being mean-spirited and say you're wrong when I'm not wrong at all. It's a matter of listening to the video. People like equal comparisons. They understand same time in the marketplace, same direction, right? You compare unlike times and you get unlike results. Okay, so who wins this? Who wins total return? Well, pretty substantially, our yield, our new yield max king, the real yield max now, better known as Granite, right? The old yield max is looking more like yield minimum or yield nav loss. But now we have a new yield max and a new nav loss king. And that's Granite. But when they win, right? Nothing is changed here. Now, these guys typically lose the least, right? Curve. Love Curve for that. But sometimes when you're going down, you're going down. You can't prevent that, right? So they don't pay much. That's always been the problem. They pay monthly. It's conservative. You pay weekly in a flat to slightly up market, you're going to collect that premium 4 times. So you're going to get more premium for the month. But they do manage to stay down because look at Rex. Rex is in here. Who's in second place? So second place is Tesla. Okay. You're tied here, well, and then third place is Rex, and then your fourth place isn't really that bad. 2 11s, both Roundhill and Curve. Now Curve Roundhill went down substantially more, 60%, but it also paid 72.05, so it's still positive. And Granite got there by paying almost 110 and losing 76. I don't like it, but in this circumstance, I couldn't argue with it. But I also think Tesla is a turnaround champ. So I want to know who's going to collect the upside. I kind of think that TSLW will do very well here. I think Rex could also. Because you can't capture the upside in Tesla if Tesla starts really moving. All right. So let's look at 2 more categories, right? MSTR, which is still not doing that well, guys. That's why, other than MSTR itself, and again, these are all unequal. You got a June, you got a May, you got an April, you got a February. Can't compare unlike times in the market. Not fairly, can you? Okay, so now let's look at Rex, okay? Minus 977. Well, you notice something here? I got 464. I can't ignore Roundhill, but I can't really fairly compare them because they didn't come out till 724. So they haven't had a chance to really show up. They got 41 calendar days in the market. They've got 91 calendar days. Who wins this scenario over here? IMST, right? Bitwise. So why do they primarily win? Well, they win by just paying a lot. Of course, Misty came in and paid 63. MST paid 64, the 200% guy, right? But what's the 200% guy going to do in a down market? It's going to out nav decline everybody, which it did. So it's actually in the last place. This doesn't count because it's only 724. It's not comparing apples to apples. So I just ignore it for now. And as I build up and it's 3 months out, I'll go make everybody 724 in October or November so I can get some equal comparison. So right now, Bitwise wins this. All right. So let's go to all the Coinbase, right? So what do we have in Coinbase? We had it high flying, right? Going into July-ish, I think. I don't recall the exact chart, but it was high flying into that move in August. I don't know its exact peak date. And then it got the crap kicked out of it again, right? So up and down like a yo-yo. So what do we have? We got positives and we got negatives. So if you try and look at this, you say, hey, coin was the place to be. It's 217%, right? But again, that's a whole bunch. That's 4 5 2s and a 6 4. How about we make everybody 6 4 and then we bring Granite in, right? Because that's when they launch some more things on 7/29. So who wins on all the 6 4 comparisons? Kind of for the moment, ignoring Granite. Well, you got a COII, which just absolutely sucks, at minus 20% since 6/4. You got Rex at 24.52. That's a 40% swing in total return. Why? Because you're getting killed over here on your NAV. Not killed as much as the winner, right? But when you want to pay me 297.88% on an annualized basis, and you paid me an actual 74%, right? Or sorry, I said Granite, and it's not, it's Bitwise. I mean, these guys just paid like crazy. Since 5/2, they paid $21, more than double anybody else. Well, about double, okay, of Roundhill. But just, is that, can that hold up? Well, it held up enough here to get to 113 minus 70. Again, we're not comparing like for like. So I don't call them the winner here. Actually, the winner here would have been Roundhill if you just look at the 3 or 4 5 2 guys. But when you go to 6 4, ICOI surges, right? 297% dividend annualized. I mean, they got a $9 payment, a $4, and a $5 payment on the monthlies. So they just got in the door of three big payments, okay? But they're also down. They were 53 and they're down to 36. So they're losing 80% on the NAV. So this number is going to get adjusted down because it's on a small series of of days, guys. If I had to pick who I liked, I'll go with COIW in this scenario because their NAV is only minus 1.75. So I like it much better over time. I'm not saying ICOI didn't win this, they did. Granite's problem here, I do not like 91 when you're only paying 150%. But again, it's not fair. It's not the same period of time. So I gotta ignore that one. All right, guys, that's what I got for you. My Patreon is on the screen if you're interested in that. I'm up over probably 120 people in that Patreon. It's growing like a weed. We're having a lot of fun there. I put out content that I don't put out on the regular channel. I put it out based on the tiers. And I do a lot of education over there. I've got a lot of people that are anxious to learn. They're not, the worst you can have somebody is have 5 or 10 years in the market and you become so opinionated, you know everything. You don't know everything after 45 years. I still learn, right? It took me, I was only interested in Bitcoin about 7 or 8 years ago. You couldn't convince me. I was too hard headed. It was more of a gold bug. And then I sit down and said, well, why is it doing what it's doing? And I studied it and I learned and I studied it more. And so I became a Bitcoin bull. I'm not into meme coins. I'm not into breaking. That's a full-time job, just like the miners. If you really want to be good, precious metals and miners and the commodity super cycle, you have to be all in and study it all the time. Okay. So right now I split my time between high yield and precious metals, and soon it'll be 100% precious metals, but there'll be a lot of opportunity in the high yield. So I'll talk to people about how you get high yield and income out of the precious metals and commodity super cycle, along with the cycle for growth and options and trading. So that's where my Patreon's focus, guys. If you want to learn, go there. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Again, Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Have a great week ahead. I hope you had a fabulous holiday weekend. Bye for now.